Minister Sir John Major heavily criticised the series, claiming it's damaging, malicious fiction. Well, it's because the new series of the show will reportedly include a scene where Charles, then the Prince of Wales, played by Dominic West, briefs the Prime Minister against the Queen in a bid to replace her. That's despite the fact that Sir John claims he was never approached by the makers of the series to fact-check any script material. Netflix openly admit the show is a dramatisation of real events. But I want to ask if its representation of history is disrespectful, frankly, to our royal family. Joining me now is the royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams. Richard, it's all very well and good, The Crown going, look, this is a dramatisation of real events. But it doesn't have a big flashing warning light about exactly which bits have been dramatised, Richard, because some of it is, pretty much bob on, and then you end up with certain things, like essentially the then Prince Charles trying to launch a soft coup against his mother, for example, which I can only hope is not true. They don't have a big warning sign before that saying this is a load of rubbish, do they?
Well, firstly, we will all have, apparently, a chance to view it on the 9th of November. I'm afraid nothing in this planet would persuade Netflix to postpone it. But the answer to your question is very important. No, they don't have a disclaimer, and it's so slick and the production values are so good, a large number of people will think that what is shown actually happened. In the case, for example, of Sir John Major, who's absolutely outraged, as well he might be, supposedly the fictional Prince Charles, played by Dominic West. When we saw Prince Charles in the last series, played by Josh O'Connor, he was as blind as idiotic whoop. And so, it gives you an idea of the way they can portray members of the royal family. But the point is, this never happened. There was a poll which showed 47% of people at some point thought that the Queen might consider abdication. It certainly didn't or did not add up to what the Crown decided to make it. And the fact that no such conversation either took place or could have taken place, the Majors make derogatory comments about the royals. But it's not just that. Throughout the series, including a particularly obscene episode which showed the Duke of Edinburgh's pregnant sister, who died tragically in an air crash that had nothing to do with him at all in 1936, because of a supposed misdemeanor, pure invention at Gordonston. They don't spend the time together, so she goes on the flight, and then he's thrown out of the reception after the funeral by his father and blamed. It's that sort of thing.
I get that. It's a lot of, there's a load of absolute tosh in there. I understand all of that. I'm just going to bring in our entertainment reporter, Ellie Phillips. Ellie, what I find absolutely remarkable is that Harry and Meghan, they care so much about truth bombs and all of this stuff, but The Crown is on Netflix. Harry and Meghan have got a deal with Netflix. Why would they want to work with a company that is essentially just making stuff up about his grandmother and that side of the family?
It comes down to money, essentially. Netflix are paying them an absolute whack to have their documentary, which is apparently being pushed back because they're worried about how soon it will come out after the Queen's death. However, I do disagree with the assertion that there's no warning on The Crown. It's not necessarily a warning, but the log line for the programme describes it as fictional drama based on historical events. So it is a fictional drama. I don't think it's Netflix's duty to be educating the public about the history of our country. I think if people are believing fiction to be fact, that speaks to a wider issue. It's poetic license. No one is privy to the conversations that happened between John Major and the Queen and Charles or anyone. Those conversations between
is it not tricky though, because they're using real people, right? So if it was John Major and Schminch Charles or whatever, then you could maybe say fine. But it's not. It's like this is John Major, this is Prince Charles. Go on.
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. However, like I said, they've said that these conversations are fictional. They're very clear about that. And you look at any kind of reenactment of things that have happened in history. Look at the Pam and Tommy, film that was on Hulu. They said, some of those things didn't happen. Well, again, it's fiction based on historical events. And I think you're going to have that. It's the Crown. They want entertainment. They want to spice things up.
Okay.
And they may not be factually correct, but they're entertaining. And it is an entertainment programme.
All right, Richard, I can see you're itching to get involved.
Well, it's a matter when you have very sensitive matter, and I think a gross distortion of our freedoms, that in fact they use real people, living people. The dead can't sue after all. They know perfectly well the royal family is not going to sue. There's no disclaimer, which would, I think, be extremely helpful, and they take grotesque liberties. I think there's no question also that King Charles and Queen Consort Camilla will be very concerned with what is shown and how it is shown in this documentary. And so far as the intention of the series, which began on one note with a superb cast and the balance that Peter Morgan, its creator, showed in the Queen, then it suddenly switched when Claire Foy became Queen, became Olivia Colman, who was sullen and cold, and every single member of the royal family in the last series was snobbish, nasty. You wouldn't want them in the house. They joined the mafia. That's the message of the series. And the problem also is that people, for example, who would expect to see the attempted kidnapping of Princess Anne or the shots fired at the Queen and show the bravery there, they won't see them because this is an anti-monarchist tract.